I still remember the exact words that made everyone in the cafe laugh. "That's cute," the man said with a smirk as he looked across the street at my tiny shop. "People like him never get rich. They just survive." The laughter spread around the table like wildfire. One woman even turned to look at my store before shaking her head. "I'd rather work at a fast food restaurant than own that little place." I heard every single word, not because I was trying to listen, but because my shop was only 20 feet away. I stood quietly behind the counter, pretending to organize a shelf filled with handmade candles while their voices echoed through the open door. They didn't know I could hear them. Maybe they wouldn't have cared if they did. To them, I was just another small business owner struggling to pay the bills. A middle-aged man wearing faded jeans. A shop with old wooden shelves. A hand-painted sign that looked 20 years out of date. Nothing impressive. Nothing worth respecting. What they didn't know was that I could have bought every building on that block without taking out a single loan. I simply chose not to, and before this day ended, every person who laughed at me would discover why. But to understand how that happened, you have to understand why I kept my life so simple in the first place. If you've ever been judged because of what people saw instead of who you really were, you're going to understand this story better than most. And if stories like this remind you that character is always worth more than appearances, consider subscribing to LegacyWhisper. There are many truths the world doesn't notice until it's too late. My name is Daniel Carter. I'm 58 years old. For the last 18 years, I've owned a tiny gift shop in a quiet town outside Chicago. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't modern. The shelves were built by my own hands. The front counter was older than my youngest daughter. Every decoration inside carried a memory. Instead of a designer label, people often asked why I never expanded, why I never opened another location, why I still work 6 days a week, even though online shopping had taken away half my customers. I always smiled and gave the same answer: because this place already gives me everything I need. Most people thought I was lying. The truth was much more complicated. Years earlier, I had spent almost 3 decades building a logistics company from nothing. There were nights when I slept inside delivery trucks, days when I skipped meals just to pay my employees. My wife, Emily, stood beside me through every difficult year. When success finally arrived, everyone suddenly wanted to be my friend. Investors, politicians, neighbors who had ignored us for years, even distant relatives, started calling during the holidays. Success changes how people see you. Money changes how they treat you. That lesson cost me more than I can ever explain. Then one rainy November morning, Emily was diagnosed with cancer. Everything changed. Suddenly, the meetings didn't matter. Neither did the awards hanging on my office wall. The only thing that mattered was getting one more smile from the woman who had believed in me before anyone else did. For almost 3 years, we fought together. When she passed away, the silence inside our house became unbearable. I sold my company less than a year later, not because I needed the money, because I no longer wanted the life that came with it. People thought I had disappeared. Business magazines stopped calling. Old partners assumed I had retired somewhere in Florida. None of them knew I had quietly invested most of the money long before selling the company. Those investments kept growing. Year after year, I didn't need luxury. I didn't need attention. I wanted peace. So I bought the little gift shop Emily and I had once visited on our anniversary. She used to tell me, if we ever slow down, I'd love to own a place like this. After she was gone, owning that shop became my way of keeping a promise I could no longer make to her in person. Every morning, I unlocked the same old wooden door. Every evening, I swept the floor myself. Some customers recognized kindness. Others only noticed how small the business looked. One afternoon, a teenage boy apologized because he only had enough money to buy a single candle for his mother's birthday. I secretly wrapped a second gift and slipped it into his bag. The smile on his face reminded me why I never left this place. Moments like that were worth more than another $1,000,000, but not everyone saw it that way. Across the street, a brand new luxury home decor store had opened just 6 months earlier. Bright lights, expensive displays, designer furniture. Its owner, Victor Langston, loved attention almost as much as he loved hearing himself speak, and from the very first week, he made it painfully clear that my little shop was standing in the way of the image he wanted for the neighborhood. Victor never insulted me directly at first. He preferred an audience. Every Friday afternoon, he would stand outside a showroom with local business owners, real estate agents, and anyone who looked important enough to impress. Whenever someone glanced toward my little gift shop, Victor would smile. "That place," he'd say, "it's only still open because nostalgia doesn't pay rent." Apparently miracles do. The group would laugh. I usually pretended not to hear. Emily used to tell me something I never forgot. Never argue with someone who's trying to borrow your peace. So I stayed quiet. That only seemed to frustrate Victor even more. One Monday morning, a delivery truck accidentally blocked the entrance to my store. The driver apologized over and over. Before I could answer, Victor walked over. "Careful," he joked loudly. "If you block his entrance any longer, he might lose half his weekly customers." More laughter. The driver looked embarrassed. I simply smiled. "It's all right," I told him. "Take your time." Victor looked disappointed. He wanted a fight. I refused to give him one. Business wasn't bad. It wasn't spectacular either. Some days I sold only a handful of items. Other days tourists walked in and bought handcrafted gifts for hundreds of dollars. I treated every customer exactly the same, whether they spent $5 or $500. One rainy afternoon, an elderly woman entered the shop, carrying a worn-out umbrella. She wandered quietly between the shelves. Finally, she stopped beside an old wooden music box. "My husband bought me one just like this 40 years ago," she whispered. I could see tears forming in her eyes. She looked at the price tag, then she slowly placed it back. "I shouldn't," I asked gently. "Would you tell me about him?" For nearly 20 minutes, she shared stories about the man she had loved since high school. By the time she finished, both of us were smiling. Before she left, I wrapped the music box and handed it to her. She looked confused. "I can't afford this." "I know," I replied. "But memories shouldn't always have a price." She tried to refuse. I wouldn't let her. When she hugged me, it reminded me of Emily. Moments like those were the reason I never cared whether strangers believed I was successful. Unfortunately, kindness doesn't stay secret for long. The elderly woman told her daughter. Her daughter posted about my shop online. Within days, hundreds of comments appeared. Many people praised the story. Others mocked it. One comment caught my attention. Maybe if he stopped giving things away, his business wouldn't look so poor. Thousands of people liked it. I closed my phone. People often mistake generosity for weakness. They have no idea how different those two things really are. A week later, the Chamber of Commerce announced its annual Business Excellence Gala. Every major business owner in town would attend. Victor immediately became obsessed with it. He told everyone he expected to win Entrepreneur of the Year. He even hired photographers before the nominations were announced. Meanwhile, I almost threw the invitation away. Fancy dinners never interested me. But my daughter, Sarah, convinced me. "You've hidden from the world long enough, Dad." "I'm not hiding," she smiled. "You own 3 suits. You've worn the same one for 15 years. You still drive Mom's old pickup truck, and almost nobody even knows your story." I laughed. "That's exactly how I like it." She squeezed my hand. "Maybe, but Mom also believed people should never confuse humility with invisibility." That sentence stayed with me all week. The night of the gala finally arrived. Luxury cars lined the entrance. People stepped onto the red carpet wearing expensive watches and designer dresses. I parked Emily's old pickup truck near the back. As I walked toward the entrance, I heard familiar laughter. Victor, standing with several wealthy investors. He looked me up and down before speaking loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. I didn't realize they invited customers tonight. A few people chuckled. Then he looked at my suit. The museum called. They'd like their jacket back. More laughter. Someone actually took out a phone to record. I could feel dozens of eyes watching me, waiting, expecting me to lose my temper. Instead, I smiled. I hope you enjoy your evening, Victor. That answer irritated him far more than any insult ever could. As I walked inside, I noticed something strange. Several executives across the ballroom suddenly turned toward me. One man's expression changed completely. He whispered something to another executive. Within seconds, 3 people I had never expected to see again began walking directly toward me. Victor noticed. His smile slowly disappeared, because those weren't ordinary guests. They were some of the most influential business leaders in the entire state, and every one of them seemed to know exactly who I was. The ballroom grew strangely quiet as the 3 executives crossed the room. Victor was still smiling, but it was the kind of smile people wear when they're trying to convince themselves nothing is wrong. The first man reached me and extended both hands. Daniel Carter. His voice carried farther than he intended. It's been far too long. I smiled. Good to see you again, Michael. A woman standing beside him laughed. I've been telling people all evening that you would never come to one of these events. I almost didn't, I admitted. Michael shook his head. You built one of the finest logistics companies this region has ever seen. Half the businesses in this room still use systems you designed. People nearby stopped talking. Someone whispered, "Did he say Daniel Carter?" Another person looked me up on their phone. Then another. Within seconds, dozens of screens lit up around the ballroom. The same man who had been laughed at only minutes earlier suddenly became the center of every conversation. Victor's confident expression slowly disappeared. He walked closer. "I'm sorry," he interrupted politely. "Have we met before?" Michael looked confused. "You don't know Daniel?" Victor forced a smile. "I don't believe so." Michael almost laughed. "You own one of the largest home decor businesses in the county, don't you?" "Yes." "Then you've probably earned money because of the distribution network Daniel created years ago." Victor blinked. "What?" The woman beside Michael added quietly. "When Daniel sold Carter Logistics, the deal made headlines across the business world." Someone behind Victor finally found the old article online. His phone slipped slightly in his hand. The headline was impossible to ignore. Founder Daniel Carter sells company in landmark multi-million-dollar acquisition. Another article listed his long-term investments. Another mentioned his charitable foundation. Another described him as one of the wealthiest private investors in the state. The room felt different now. Not because I had changed, but because everyone else's opinion had. Victor stared at me. "You," he struggled to finish the sentence. "You're wealthy?" I smiled gently. "I've been comfortable for a long time, but..." He glanced toward my shop through the ballroom window. "Why would someone like you own that little store?" I thought about Emily, about the old music box, about the teenage boy buying a birthday candle. Then I answered, "Because not everything valuable needs to make more money." Silence. No one laughed this time. A few minutes later, the host walked onto the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, before announcing tonight's awards, we'd like to recognize someone who has quietly transformed lives in this community for years." I honestly assumed they were talking about someone else. Then my name appeared on the screen. Photos filled the projector. The scholarship fund no one knew I financed. The local food bank I had supported anonymously for over a decade. The children's hospital wing Emily and I had donated to without putting our names on the building. The emergency grants that had saved dozens of struggling small businesses during difficult years. Even my own employees had never known where much of that money came from. The audience stood. One person started clapping. Then another. Within seconds, the entire ballroom was on its feet. I wasn't being applauded because of my bank account. I was being applauded because of what that money had quietly accomplished. That meant far more to me. When the applause finally settled, the host smiled. Daniel Carter has spent years proving that true wealth is measured by lives changed, not luxury displayed. I accepted the award. Only a few words came to mind. My wife used to say that kindness is the only investment guaranteed to grow forever. I paused. Everything I've ever built, every dollar I've earned, means nothing compared to hearing someone say, "You helped me when nobody else would." Many people wiped away tears. Even some of the toughest business owners looked down at the floor. After the ceremony ended, I walked toward the parking lot. Victor hurried after me. His voice was much quieter now. "Daniel," I turned. He looked nothing like the man who had mocked me for months. "I owe you an apology." "You do. Judged you because of your shop. You judged yourself," I replied calmly. "You believed a person's value could be measured by appearances." He lowered his head. "I was wrong, I know." He hesitated. "Can we start over?" I smiled. Respect should never depend on someone's bank account. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, I reached out my hand. He shook it, not because he deserved forgiveness, but because carrying resentment had never honored Emily's memory. The following Monday, something unexpected happened. Victor closed his showroom for the morning. Instead of advertising another luxury collection, he walked into my little shop carrying fresh coffee. No cameras, no audience, just 2 cups. "I'm here to learn," he said. For the next 2 hours, we talked not about money, but about people. Months later, he changed the way he ran his business. He started supporting local charities. He treated employees differently. He even began recommending my shop to tourists looking for meaningful gifts instead of expensive decorations. People often ask me if seeing everyone's shocked faces when they discovered my wealth was satisfying. The truth, not nearly as satisfying as watching someone become a better person. Because money can impress people, character changes them. And if there's one lesson my life has taught me, it's this: never measure someone's worth by the size of their business, the car they drive, or the clothes they wear. Some of the richest people you'll ever meet look ordinary, and some of the poorest souls hide behind expensive success. If this story touched your heart, let me know in the comments. What matters more, money or character? Share this story with someone who believes appearances tell the whole story. And if you enjoy emotional stories that remind us what truly matters, subscribe to Legacy Whisper. Until next time, remember, the loudest wealth is often the quietest.